Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to go over lesson 1, day 4, over distance and midpoint formulas. So, first thing, get your reference sheet out and we need to write down this new formula. So, this formula right here. And so, I want to show you actually two ways of doing this, one with the formula and one with the Pythagorean theorem. And usually, Pythagorean is something more people are more comfortable with. So, um, when there's a graph like this one on the paper, you can do it either way. Okay, so the first way I'm going to show you is actually not with the distance formula, but then we're going to transition and use the distance formula. With this line over here, I am going to create a right triangle. So from this lowest point, I'm just going to go over and then up. Now let's count. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 units. Okay, so I'm going to put a 4 here. And then this is 1, 2 units. And we know this is a right angle. So really, this is the Pythagorean theorem, and you can solve for this length like we did earlier in this unit. So we can do 4 squared plus 2 squared equals x squared, which is 16 plus 4. Add those two together. 16 and 4 is 20. Now, we don't want the x squared. Remember how we talked about this before? You want to get rid of the square. So the opposite is to square root, and they cancel each other out. So we're going to square root the 20. Now, we also had the lesson about how you simplify radicals. So I'm going to take the 20, and I taught two methods, the ladder method and when you make the factor tree. So let's keep going. There's two 2's and a 5. So 2 squared into 5. The square root and the square cancels, so I get 2 root 5. And I just noticed this answer over here is not right. That's a 2. Okay, so the answer is 2 root 5. Now, next we are going to use the Pythagorean theorem. And for this one, I'm going to take these two coordinates, which is at 0, -1, and 4, 1, and I'm going to label them. Now, I'm going to label them both x and y. Now, it technically doesn't matter which one is the first point and which one is the second point, just whichever one you write down first. Let's call that the first one. So let's put little ones. And then this is technically the second one that's written, so let's put 2's. So in Algebra 1, we call this plug and chug. We're going to just look up here for x sub 2. Look down here, it's a 1, so I'm going to plug this in. Every single time, guys, it's a negative here, or a minus. Now, this is where it gets tricky. This is y sub 1. So y sub 1 is -1. So -1, you have a double negative, which turns to a positive. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Good. So over here, let's see. We're going to look for x sub 2. And x sub 2 is 4. So it's a 4. X sub 1 is a 0. 4 minus 0 is 4. Right, and that's 4 is down here. And you know what? I can't believe that's wrong. I will fix that on your notes before I print that. So that's how you get the 4 and the 16, and you get 20. And then you simplify that like I did over here, and you get 2 root 5. And our two answers are the same. So usually everyone prefers the way I did it first. But if I give you the graph, I would highly recommend doing it the Pythagorean way. Now, we're going to have to know how to do it both, unfortunately. So the next one, let's strictly do it Pythagorean. So let's turn this into a right triangle. Now, you have a choice, okay? Ooh, that's not straight. We are going to either make it going this direction, or technically you could go down and over that way. So you pick. Okay, on the first one, I kind of went over, then up, and this one, I went up and then over. You pick. Now let's practice counting these intervals here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's count again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I like to count twice just to make sure I'm not messing it up. And on this next one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so I'm finding this length, which is my x. So let's do Pythagorean. 12 squared plus 5 squared equals x squared. Oh my. Okay, so 144 plus 25 equals x squared. So this is 169 equals x squared. Again, you don't want the square, so you have to square root it. And I get 13 is my answer. Oh, wait, sorry. On the next one, we are going to just use the formula, no picture. So that means we definitely have to keep referring back up here at the top to my distance formula. So let's label these. x1, y1, x2, y2. And when I do this, like, I don't know, it's the visual thing that helps me. I'm taking the two y values and I'm subtracting. So I'm starting here and I'm going to subtract those two. So my distance, and I just like to write it this way, -8 minus, and I'm minusing the -5. So minus -5. So that happens to have so many negatives. So let's clean this up. These two negatives turn into a positive. So -8 plus 5 is -3. Okay, so let's do this way. Let's start with the -1. And then I'm going to subtract 5. Then you have to square it. Okay, so -1 and -5 is -6. So here is a very common mistake. People like to say the answer here is -9 and -36. But we know from algebra this is technically -3 times -3, right? -3 times -3. And a negative times a negative is, you got it, a positive. Sorry, my hand keeps hitting stuff. And so this is +9. And so this one over here is technically -6 times -6, which is a positive 36. So 9 plus 36 is 45. My distance is the square root of 45. Now we have to decide if we can simplify that. Okay, so let's practice doing this again. And so this time we'll do the ladder method. I know 5 goes into that, and you can grab your calculator if you want. 45 divided by 5 is 9. Now 9 is not prime, so I want to keep going. 3 goes into it. So these are the three numbers that multiply to give you 45, and you can always double check it by just multiplying 3 times 5 times 3. So you have 3 squared and a 5. Now as you guys can see, the square root and the square are both there. They cancel each other out. So my answer is 3 root 5. And that is my distance. My distance is 3 root 5. Okay, so if you want to pause the video and try the next one, that's great. Or I can keep working it out with you. And I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit on this one. We are going to subtract the two y values. So it is 9 minus the -3. So that turns into a positive. And then we're going to subtract the two x values. So -7 minus a -2. Now, you can use you can use the parenthesis if it helps you, or here I didn't use the parenthesis, but it's a double negative both ways. So it's up to you which way you like. So let's keep going and try to simplify this more. 9 and 3 is 12. and that's squared. And -7 and a +2 is -5. Now, guys, this is where a lot of people goof up here because one's positive, one's negative. But we know when you square a number, it always turns positive. So this is 144. This is not negative. Because remember, this is -5 times -5, which is 25. All right, so grab your calculator. 144 and 25 is 169. Now, this is a perfect square, which means it comes out to a nice whole number. And that answer is 13. That is my distance. Okay, so the next one, and this one just like this on your homework, you are going to find the perimeter of this triangle. So let's remind you of what perimeter is. Perimeter is when you take all the sides and you add them together. Now your answer may be, it's probably going to be a decimal, honestly. Now it's on a graph. Now when it's on a graph, remember this first way up here? Yes, I like the Pythagorean way. So technically, we could do Pythagorean 3 times and add those 3 answers together. And that works really well. Okay, if you would rather find the coordinates, write out the coordinates and plug it into the distance formula, you can do that. I am going to go ahead and make this little triangle. It's up 2 units and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, perfect. So AB, the length of AB, and I'm finding this length here. I'm going to use, let's do it this way. X squared is equal to 2 squared plus 6 squared. So x squared is equal to 4 plus 36. Now let's add these two together. So that gives me 40, and then I have to square root it. Okay, so for right now, I'm just going to leave it the square root of 40, and that's AB. Okay, let's do the next one, and it's your choice. I'm just going to do AC. All right, so over and up, it's 2 units this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, it's the same. So if it's exactly the same, we know that answer, right? So I don't think we have to write it out. If it's the exact same, we know it is the square root of 40. So we know if these two are the same, that means it has to be isosceles. It might be equilateral depending on if this one's also the same, which I don't think it is. Okay, so the last one, BC. All right, boom, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so guys, this is a completely different kind of triangle. So 4 squared plus 4 squared equals x squared. So 16 and 16 is 32. And again, we're just going to leave this in square root form for now. All right, excuse me. Now, so for the perimeter, we're just going to add all these answers together. So we're going to take the square root of 40 plus the square root of 40 plus the square root of 32. I would take your calculator, and most calculators, you can just type it straight in. Type in the square root of 40, and you will have to push the arrow button most likely so you can come out of the square root and hit the plus sign, and then the square root of 40 again and push over to come outside the square root, and then hit another plus and the square root of 32. So a common mistake is when you type it in, this line keeps going, and then you type plus the square root of 40, and then this one keeps going. Then you type in the square root of 32, and this one keeps going, and that's completely wrong, okay? Please don't do that. You have to push, if you're using the yellow calculator, you have to push like the over to the right button to come out of the square root. Now, The yellow calculator is trying to be helpful, and it gives you an answer like this. Okay, we don't like that answer. That answer is ugly. This is a 4, by the way. So we are going to push the white button above enter, and it looks like arrows like this. Okay, and this is it's like a toggle button. It changes it from this version to a decimal. So when I push that button, it changes it to 18.3. Okay, so that is my perimeter, 18.3. And we know it's an isosceles triangle, two sides are the same. All right, so we're going to flip it over. And the next part is about midpoints. And of course, midpoint, mid means middle. So it's the point literally in the middle. So we're going to start out very easy on a number line. So how do you find the midpoint on a number line? All you're going to do is you're going to take the two numbers, like the A and the B, whatever the number is, and you're going to add those two together and divide by 2. Guys, it's an average. Like if you have two test scores, what's the average? You add them up and you divide by 2. All right, so for example 4, H is at 18, and B is at, what would that be, 28, and you add them up and you divide by 2. So 18 plus 28 is 46, divide by 2, and I get a final answer of 23. So 23 should be in the very middle. So let's try the next one. G appears at 2, A is at 12, add them up, divide by 2. So 14 over 2 is 7. Pretty easy. C is at 36, and you're going to add E. E is 40. All right, so 40 plus 36 is 76. And you divide that by 2, and you get 38. Okay, so D is at 16. H is at 18. You add them up. 16 plus 18 is 34. Divide by 2, and it's 17. Last one of these. F is at 24. E is at 40. So what is that? 64. And half of that is 32. All right, so this is getting you warmed up for the next part. Okay, so this is something, again, you might want to put on your reference sheet. Again, all you're doing is the same thing we did above. You're adding the x's together, divided by 2. You're going to add the y's together, and you're going to divide by 2. Okay, so I know it's on a graph, and you might be able to kind of just look at it and eyeball the answer. So they tell you the answer down here. The answer is here. Now the way that we show that they're the same is we put these little congruent marks here and here. That just means they're the same length. But what happens if we have to do it mathematically and not just look at it and eyeball it? So let's practice this real quick. So I'm going to take my points, and I don't like how it's labeled here. I'm just going to label x1, y1, x2, y2. And I'm going to take the two x values, so 0 and 4, and see them here. I add those two together. So 4 plus 0 is 4, and divide it by 2, and I get 2. Take the negative 1 and the positive 1, add them together to get 0, and 0 divided by any number is 0. So we just did the work and showed that this is your midpoint. Again, the point in the middle. Okay, so on this one, we're supposed to find and graph the midpoint for each side. So the first thing we have to do is find the coordinates. So this one is at, what, negative 7, 3. And this is at 5, 3. And this one is at 5, negative 2. Okay, so we're going to have to do 3 times. So I'm going to start with xz. So I'm going to take my two y values, the -7 and the 5. I want to add those together, -7 and 5, and divide by 2. Then I'm going to take, what just happened? I'm going to take the two y values, the 3 and the 3, add those together, and divide by 2. Okay, so let's see what this gives us. -7 and a 5 is -2 over 2. And that 3 plus 3 is 6. All right, one more time. Let's simplify this. -1, 3. All right, let's see if this makes sense. -1, back 1, up 3. And you know what? That does look like these two are equal in measure. Good. That one's done. Let's do x, y. Let's see if I can get rid of my little marks. Okay, x, y. I'm going to take the two x values, the first numbers. So -7 and, what was that, 5? -7 and 5. So this is xy. -7 and 5. Oh, we already did that before. Look above. Now let's do the y values, 3 and -2. Now let's simplify this. -7 and 5 is -2. And 3 and -2 is -1. So this simplifies down to -1 and a -1.5. Or just -1 and -0.5. So -1, -0.5. Oh, and look, I just caught myself. That's an error. That's not right. So this is actually 3, my goodness, 3 plus +3 minus 2 is +1. So guys, this is a positive. See, that's why it's good to graph it. I just caught myself. That is the midpoint. Now I'm going to put two little marks on here. And those two little marks show me that these are different links than the links above. And so you're just matching them together to make it easy for the next person to understand what's going on. Now we have one more to do, and that is YZ. Okay. Whenever they're both 5s, we're just going to take 5 plus 5, divide by 2. And when you have 3 and -2, so that's +3 and -2. All right, let's come down here. So 5 and 5 is 10. +3 and a -2 is +1. And simplified is 5 and then a +0.5. Okay, so positive and here. All right, guys, now these links are not the same as the links over on the rest of the triangle, so I'm going to put 3 congruent marks on this so they match up. We found all of our midpoints. So what do we notice? We notice when maybe both the numbers are the same, you really don't have to worry about adding divided by 2 because guess what? You get the same number back, right? And that happened a couple times, like up here with the 3s. When both of them were 3, you get a 3 back. So that's a little bit of a time saver, which makes sense because these are both like on the same line, right? They're both going to be 3 up. So the midpoint has to also be 3 up. All right, I hope that makes sense. And guys, we're almost done. So I'm giving you a graph now. I don't know if you need it necessarily, but you're going to find the midpoint between these two. And honestly, graphing midpoints, at least for me, is not helpful. Finding the distance, yes, I like that. But I'm just going to do it by adding and dividing by 2. So let's add the two x values together. 6 plus -3, divide by 2, and add the two y values, -1 and 8, and divide by 2. So on top, 6 minus 3 is a positive 3. And then negative 1 and 8 is 7 over 2. And let's simplify this. This is 1.5 and 3.5. And that would be your midpoint. Now, I'm going to throw a little wrench into this, guys. Okay? And I'm not even going to use this graph. I'm just going to show you, like, if you have a segment, okay, A to B, and a midpoint, if the midpoint of it is here in the middle, and I want to mark it as congruent or as equal, this is if the midpoint of AB is at, and I'm going to call it M for midpoint, is at 3, 4, and A is at -1, -5. What is B? X, Y. Guys, there's one of these on your homework. You need to know how to do these. I know it's the last question. We just have to endure this and keep going. How do you find that X and Y value? Okay, so it's going to be similar to what we did over here in example 6. We're going to add the two x's together and divide by 2. Okay, so we're going to set it up so it looks very similar, not that one, to this one right here. Okay, so look at the x values, -1, but then this over here is just an x. So I'm going to go -1 plus x over 2. Then I'm going to take my y value, -5, and when I add the y value to it, and it's over 2. And then if you remember, we were finding the midpoint on the first example, but here they tell you the midpoint. The midpoint is at 3, 4. So let's refer back over here. Once I did all of this, the answer was here, right? So I'm going to take all of this and say I'm going to set it equal to my x value. So -1 plus x over 2 equals 3. And I have to solve that. Then I'm going to take this y value. I'm going to set it equal to the y. -5 plus y over 2 equals 4. So guys, it's algebra 1 time, okay? How do you get rid of this denominator of 2? Well, if I multiply both sides by 2, those 2's cancel. So -1 plus x is 6. Then I add 1 to both sides, and x value is 7. Okay, let's do that again. Take the 2, multiply both sides by 2. So -5 plus y is 8. And add 5 to both sides. So y is 13. This is the coordinate. This is what you're looking for. My answer is 7, 13. That's your answer. And honestly, if you wanted to check this, you could do it mentally. You don't have to do this huge problem. So 7 minus 1 is 6, and half of 6 is 3. Guys, look at the 3 here. And 13, and then -5 would be 8. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we did it right. All right, so this is it for the lesson. Please message your teacher if you have any questions. Thanks.